What would you do if your partner not only walked out on you but shattered the trust you built together? Would you let it break you or fight back to reclaim your life? Before we start, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts as we unravel this incredible story. Meet Ryan and Julia. From the outside, they seemed like the perfect couple. Ryan, a hardworking construction manager, spent his days overseeing projects and solving problems on job sites. His work was tough, but he thrived on the challenge, always coming home with a sense of pride despite the long hours and exhaustion. Julia, his wife of 9 years, was everything Ryan thought he could ask for. Bright, outgoing, and always full of energy. She worked as an executive assistant in a busy corporate office, juggling meetings and deadlines with effortless charm. At home, she brought warmth and balance to Ryan's structured, straightforward nature. They lived in a cozy neighborhood in Seattle, surrounded by friends and neighbors who often admired their seemingly happy marriage. Their evenings were quiet, filled with simple joys, shared dinners, catching up on their favorite shows, and talking about their plans for the future. But under the surface, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Julia loved excitement and adventure, often craving more spontaneity than Ryan's practical routines offered. Ryan, on the other hand, was happy with their steady life, believing their quiet stability was what held them together. The cracks in their relationship were subtle at first, Julia working late more often, Ryan noticing her distant looks during conversations. They didn't argue much, but Ryan could feel something was off. Little did he know, those small cracks were about to widen into a chasm. He couldn't ignore that it was a regular Thursday evening when Ryan came home, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. He parked his truck in the driveway, feeling the usual exhaustion after another long day managing a construction project. But as he opened the door to their home, something felt different. A sleek leather suitcase sat by the entryway, polished and out of place in their familiar space. Julia was sitting on the couch, her posture stiff and her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked up when Ryan entered, her eyes darting away as if she couldn't meet his gaze. "Ryan," she started, her voice unusually soft. "We need to talk." Ryan set his keys down slowly, his stomach nodding at her tone. "What's going on?" he asked cautiously. Julia hesitated, then forced a brittle smile. "I need some space. I'm going to Miami. For a week." Ryan's heart sank. "Miami? For what?" Her next words hit him like a freight train. "I'm going with Patrick." Patrick, her boss, the polished, self-assured man Ryan had met a few times at office parties. Ryan had never liked the way Patrick seemed to hover around Julia, but he had brushed it off, trusting his wife. "You're going with Patrick?" Ryan repeated, his voice low but trembling with barely contained anger. Julia nodded quickly, as though rushing through the explanation would make it hurt less. "It's just for a week, Ryan. I need time to think, to figure things out. Patrick thinks this might be good for me." "Good for us? Good for us?" Ryan's voice cracked as he stepped closer, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter for support. "Are you even hearing yourself? You're going on a trip with your boss? And you think that's good for us?" Julia looked down, avoiding his eyes. "We've been stuck, Ryan. You know it as much as I do. Maybe this will help us see things more clearly." Ryan stared at her, a storm of emotions crashing through him. Anger, disbelief, pain. "You packed a bag, made plans with another man, and now you're telling me this is for our marriage?" She hesitated again, then reached into her purse and handed him a piece of paper. "Patrick thought this might help keep things calm while I'm gone," she said. Ryan unfolded the paper, his hands shaking. It was a list of guidelines. No arguments before or after the trip. Don't discuss the trip with anyone. No social media posts about the trip. Stay calm and wait at home. Ryan's jaw tightened as he stared at the absurd list. He couldn't believe the audacity of it, or of Julia handing it to him as if it were a reasonable request. "You've got to be kidding me," Ryan finally said, his voice cold and quiet. Julia stood, picking up her suitcase. "It's just a week," she said again, as if repeating it would make him believe it. "This doesn't change anything." I love you, Ryan. She walked to the door, her heels clicking against the floor, and left without looking back. Ryan stood in silence, the crumpled paper in his hand feeling heavier than it should. His mind raced, replaying her words and the look in her eyes. His world had shifted in an instant, leaving him standing in the ruins of what he thought was a stable marriage. Ryan sat in the silent house, the weight of Julia's betrayal crushing him. The paper she had handed him lay crumpled on the kitchen table, mocking him with its absurd demands. Stay calm, wait at home, as if he was supposed to sit idly by while his wife jetted off with another man. At first, Ryan was numb. The words she had said, I need space, this will be good for us, played on a loop in his head. But as the hours passed, numbness gave way to anger. A slow-burning fury took hold, fueling his determination. He wasn't going to let Julia's choices define his life. He wasn't going to wait at home, as if he were a placeholder while she explored her so-called options. Ryan was a man of action, and he knew exactly what he needed to do. By midnight, Ryan had a plan. He opened his laptop and began taking notes, each point sharper and more deliberate than the last. Freeze joint bank accounts. Change the locks. Gather evidence of the affair. Contact Patrick's wife. Rebuild my life without her. The next morning, Ryan made his first call to Bethany Chambers, a no-nonsense divorce attorney with a reputation for being relentless. Within hours, he was sitting in her office, laying everything out on the table. She left for Miami with her boss, Ryan said, his voice steady but laced with anger. I'm not going to sit around and let her walk all over me. Bethany nodded, taking notes. The first step is protecting your assets. I'll help you freeze the joint accounts. Do you have evidence of the affair? Not yet, Ryan admitted. But I'll find it. Bethany leaned forward, her tone firm. Start digging. Emails, texts, photos, anything that ties her to him. The more evidence we have, the stronger your case will be. In the meantime, we'll take steps to secure your home. Is her name on the title? No, Ryan said. Good, Bethany replied. That makes it simpler. Change the locks. Pack up her belongings if you want. Make it clear that she made her choice. Ryan left her office feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just reacting to Julia's betrayal. He was taking control of his future. That afternoon, Ryan got to work. He called the bank and froze their joint accounts, ensuring she wouldn't have access to their savings. Then, he hired a locksmith to change every lock on the house. As the locksmith worked, Ryan boxed up Julia's belongings, cataloging each item with cold precision. By the end of the day, everything was packed and moved into a storage unit. He sent Julia an email, listing where she could retrieve her things. The tone was calm, almost businesslike, but the message was clear. She was no longer welcome in the life they had built together. While organizing her belongings, Ryan stumbled upon an old tablet she had forgotten to take. Remembering Julia's habit of reusing passwords, he unlocked it and began searching. What he found left him reeling. Photos of Julia and Patrick at work events, flirtatious texts, and hotel reservations. Each piece of evidence felt like another dagger to the heart, but Ryan stayed focused. By the time the sun set, Ryan had sent everything to Bethany, ensuring their case was airtight. He wasn't just dismantling the life he had shared with Julia. He was rebuilding a new one, piece by piece. That night, Ryan sat in his now empty living room, the walls stripped of warmth and memories. But for the first time, he didn't feel hopeless. The blank walls weren't a reminder of loss. They were a canvas for his new beginning. Julia's excitement bubbled as she stepped off the plane in Miami, hand in hand with Patrick. The first-class flight, the champagne, and the promises of an unforgettable week had swept her up in a fantasy she believed would give her the thrill she had been craving. Patrick had spared no expense, and their sleek hotel suite overlooked the glittering ocean. This is just the beginning, Patrick said with his trademark confident smile. Julia smiled back, telling herself she had made the right choice, even if the look in Ryan's eyes when she left still haunted her. The first day felt like a dream. Patrick took her to upscale restaurants, exclusive beach clubs, and high-end boutiques. He was charming, attentive, and everything she thought she had been missing in her life. But as the days passed, cracks began to show. By the second evening, Patrick's attention started to wane. At dinner, he seemed glued to his phone, scrolling through emails and taking calls between courses. "You've been on that thing all day," Julia teased, trying to lighten the mood. Patrick barely glanced up. "Deadlines don't wait," he muttered, brushing her off. The charm that had captivated her now felt rehearsed. His answers grew curt, and the connection she had imagined between them seemed more like a transaction than a relationship. By the third day, Patrick was leaving her alone for hours, disappearing 4 meetings without explanation. Julia wandered the hotel, her initial excitement fading into unease. She told herself it was temporary, that Patrick's focus on work was just a sign of his ambition. But doubts crept in, nagging at her every time he brushed her aside. On the 4th night, they attended an exclusive gala, an event Julia had been looking forward to. She wore a sleek black gown and hoped the evening would rekindle the spark she felt slipping away. But Patrick spent most of the night networking, leaving her alone at the bar, sipping cocktails and pretending not to notice the pitying glances from other guests. At one point, Patrick returned briefly, his tone sharp. "Stop looking so bored," he snapped. "You're making us look bad." Julia's cheeks burned with humiliation. This wasn't the adventure she had imagined. The man who had promised her excitement and attention now treated her like a prop. That night, Patrick invited 2 colleagues back to their suite for drinks. Julia, already drained, voiced her discomfort. "Relax," Patrick said dismissively. "This is how deals get made. You'll be fine." She sat on the balcony as Patrick laughed with his guests inside, the sound grating against her growing regret. Staring at the crashing waves below, she realized just how far she had drifted from the life she once had. Ryan's face flashed in her mind, the way he always put her first, the way he looked at her like she was the most important person in the world. By the 5th day, Julia's unease had transformed into full-blown regret. The glamour of the trip couldn't hide the cold truth. Patrick didn't value her. He wasn't the man she thought he was, and deep down, she knew he never cared about her the way Ryan had. The final straw came when Patrick scheduled a private dinner for the 2 of them. Julia arrived at the restaurant dressed and hopeful, only to wait over an hour alone. Eventually, she received a text. Something came up. "Handle dinner yourself." Julia stared at the message, her stomach sinking. Picking at the overpriced appetizer she ordered out of obligation, tears welled in her eyes. She thought of Ryan, the way he would never leave her sitting alone, the way he always made her feel cared for, even when things were hard. That night, as she lay awake in the cavernous hotel suite, Julia scrolled through old photos on her phone. Memories of Ryan flooded her. Their first road trip, quiet Sundays baking together, the way he smiled at her during anniversaries. She had traded real love for a hollow fantasy. And now, the life she had destroyed felt like a distant dream she could never return to. Back in Seattle, Ryan was far from idle. As Julia's betrayal simmered in his mind, he focused on ensuring her actions had consequences. Not just for her, but for Patrick as well. While sifting through the evidence he'd gathered, Ryan stumbled upon Patrick's wife's contact information. Her name was Amanda, and Ryan remembered meeting her briefly at a holiday party. She had seemed warm and approachable, a stark contrast to Patrick's smug demeanor. Ryan debated his next move carefully. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about doing what felt right. Amanda deserved to know the truth, just as much as Ryan had. After hours of hesitation, he crafted a carefully worded email, attaching screenshots of texts, photos, and even hotel reservations that proved the affair. The email was short but deliberate. "Amanda, I don't know how else to say this, but you deserve to know the truth. Julia and Patrick have been involved for months. Attached is everything I've found. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this." Amanda's response came within minutes. Her shock and anger were palpable, even through text. She thanked Ryan for his honesty and assured him she would handle things on her end. The fallout began almost immediately. Amanda confronted Patrick that evening, blindsiding him with the evidence. Their argument escalated into a full-blown fight that spilled into the professional world. Amanda, furious and determined, shared details of Patrick's infidelity with his business partners and the board of directors at his company. Patrick's reputation, carefully cultivated over years of charm and manipulation, crumbled overnight. Within days, rumors spread like wildfire. Patrick's colleagues distanced themselves, his clients pulled out of deals, and his position as a high-level executive was in jeopardy. By the end of the week, he was suspended from his role pending further investigation. An outcome fueled not only by the affair, but by whispers of other questionable practices tied to his name. Julia didn't escape the fallout either. When she returned to Seattle, she found herself locked out of the life she had left behind. The locks on the house were changed, her belongings boxed up and placed in a storage unit. A for sale sign stood in the front yard like a silent declaration that her chapter with Ryan was over. Panic surged through her as she tried her key, only to realize it no longer worked. She pounded on the door, calling Ryan's name, but the house remained silent. Frustrated, she pulled out her phone and dialed his number, only to hear a pre-recorded message. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Desperate, Julia called her parents. Her father's voice was calm but firm when he answered. "Julia, you need to come here. Ryan filed for divorce. It's over." The words hit her like a freight train. She sank onto the front steps, tears streaming down her face. The life she had taken for granted was gone, and all she was left with was regret. Ryan, meanwhile, found solace in the actions he had taken. For the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of control over his life. The house, once filled with memories that now felt like ghosts, was being sold, and he had moved into a modern downtown apartment. The space was simple, minimalist, and a reflection of his fresh start. While Ryan's life began to rebuild, the effects of his actions rippled outward. Amanda kept him updated on Patrick's downfall. After being suspended from his job, Patrick faced further scrutiny when evidence of financial misconduct surfaced. His career, once a shining beacon of success, was now in ruins. For Julia, the social consequences were brutal. At work, her colleagues avoided her, whispers of her affair trailing her like a shadow. Friends she once leaned on distanced themselves, unwilling to be drawn into the drama. She reached out to Ryan one final time, drafting a heartfelt letter filled with apologies and regret. "Ryan, I know I've hurt you in ways I can never undo. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know how deeply sorry I am. You didn't deserve this, and I will carry the regret forever." Ryan read the letter but felt no anger, only pity. He folded it neatly and tucked it into a drawer. Closure didn't come from Julia's words. It came from within himself. With his life now on a new path, Ryan focused on his work and family. He poured his energy into a major waterfront project, earning recognition as one of Seattle's top construction managers. In his downtime, he found joy in simple things: quiet mornings, long walks, and rebuilding his sense of self. Through mutual friends, Ryan met Emily, a vibrant graphic designer with a calm and steady demeanor. Their connection was slow and natural, rooted in mutual respect and shared values. For the first time in years, Ryan felt a spark of genuine happiness. As he stood on his apartment balcony one evening, watching the city lights twinkle, Ryan reflected on how far he had come. The betrayal, the pain, the anger, it had all shaped him, but it no longer defined him. He had reclaimed his life and, with it, found the strength to move forward. Ryan's new life began with small, deliberate steps. His downtown apartment, sleek and minimalist, reflected the fresh start he had envisioned. The blank walls were a canvas for a life free from betrayal, a life he was determined to rebuild. He threw himself into his work, taking on a challenging waterfront development project that quickly became his focus. His reputation as a reliable and creative construction manager grew, earning him respect and new opportunities. The long hours kept his mind busy, but it was the satisfaction of creating something new that truly drove him forward. Outside of work, Ryan discovered joy in the little things. Saturday mornings were spent exploring the local farmers market, and quiet evenings gave him time to rediscover hobbies he had put aside. Slowly, The weight of the past began to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose and peace. One sunny afternoon, Ryan met Emily. She was a graphic designer who had just moved to the city, introduced to Ryan by a mutual friend at a casual get-together. Emily wasn't flashy or dramatic. She was kind, grounded, and had a way of making Ryan feel at ease. Their connection grew naturally, without the pressure or pretenses that had defined his past. Emily admired Ryan's steady determination and his openness about rebuilding his life, while Ryan found himself drawn to her warmth and creativity. As the weeks passed, Ryan noticed something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Emily wasn't a replacement for the life he had lost, but a sign that something better was possible. For the first time, Ryan began to believe that love, trust, and happiness could be part of his story again. Standing on his balcony one quiet evening, Ryan watched the city lights sparkle against the night sky. The pain of betrayal, once a constant ache, now felt distant, like an old scar that no longer hurt. The lessons he had learned were clear. Betrayal had broken him, but it had also taught him resilience. He had faced the worst, yet he had found a way to build something stronger. His journey reminded him of the importance of self-worth, of setting boundaries, and of never settling for less than he deserved. Ryan smiled, thinking about the future, not as something to fear, but as a new chapter waiting to unfold. With a fresh start and a heart open to possibilities, he was ready to embrace whatever came next. And that's how Ryan turned betrayal into strength and reclaimed his life. He didn't just survive. He thrived, showing us all the power of resilience and self-worth. What would you have done in Ryan's shoes? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Unheard Stories for more incredible tales of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes endings are just the beginning of something better. See you in the next video.